in writing from the insurance company, then go ahead and apply for FEMA. And they say, yes, absolutely, apply for both. Because again, there are other things that maybe insurance won't help you with. Maybe you didn't have the food coverage or something for the food that you lost in the power outage, and maybe FEMA can help you with that.
You know, one of the other tips that I'll give folks, and this is, look, if you've had damage or not, particularly if you haven't, we do this every year in our house. We do a home inventory in January after the holidays. Chances are there are some new shiny things in your house. Grab your cell phone, go around room to room and just take a video of everything, because when you're sitting there in that state of like emotional duress, right, trying to remember what things looked like before the insulation came falling through the wet ceiling, right, it's nice to have some sort of, you know, ability to say, hey, here's what my place looked like before this happened. And I think it makes the process easier. And we recommend it all the time. And I know people hear us. I also know they don't do it, but it takes like 5 minutes. So
yeah, and you know, the one silver lining that I think came from this incident is hurricane season is around the corner. And so it's getting people to start thinking, what do I need to do to get ready for the next crisis? You know, what kind of emergency supplies can I get? You know, flashlights, things like that, doing that inventory. So whatever you just learned that you were not prepared for this, now you know.
Right, do it again. All right, I want to switch gears here so that I can catch you up on what we're working on here in Dallas. And I'll actually go to this question right here from Big Perm 53216. What rights do I have?
I want to see the Big Perm. She doesn't have a picture.
Where's your picture? Like, of all people that need a photo for their avatar here. What rights do I have to force my landlord to fix my walls damaged by water from the big freeze? Okay, so one of the big issues that we're having here in Dallas, I'm sure you guys are having it down in Houston as well, is all of the storm damage and people that are being displaced from their homes and trying to figure out, okay, what are my rights here as a renter? You know, do I have to pay the rent? Will I get my security deposit back? Can I break my lease? Are they obligated to move me? And one of the issues that we had here was that we were starting to hear, and again, this is all about correct information, we were starting to hear, oh, well, this city has an ordinance that protects you extra, or this one, you know, has to do this. And because there was really no set standard in terms of how some of these apartment complexes were treating their tenants, some of them were saying, look, we're a huge company. We have 500 buildings across the state. We will move you across town into a property that hasn't been damaged. And people get the idea of, oh, well, my landlord is required to move me if the building that they own is no longer, you know, suitable or habitable. And in fact, that's actually not the case. You know, so for folks who are watching, who are thinking, okay, there's no floor, there's no ceiling, the pipes have burst, you know, what am I supposed to do? Unfortunately, for a lot of you, there's really no easy answer here. One of the things that we've been talking a lot about is this idea of the Texas property code that says you have the right to terminate your lease, but only under special conditions. I want to play you a soundbite from Legal Aid of North Texas.
The short answer is yes, your rent is still due. The landlord is not required to give an automatic reduction or proration of the rent because repairs are necessary or the lack of utilities. The longer answer is that if, as a practical matter, the dwelling is no longer habitable, the tenant does have the right, or the landlord, either one, has the right to terminate the lease.
So a lot of information in here. So first up, the question we were getting from our viewers a lot that they wanted to know is, look, there's no hot water, there's no water at all. You are not providing me with a space where I can live. Shouldn't I be entitled to some sort of reduction in my rent? And the short answer, like you heard, is no, there's actually nothing that triggers some sort of automatic proration of your rent. Now, what the law says, and we're referencing Texas Property Code 92.054, and if you are somebody who's interested
That's
here,
impressive.
yeah, if you're interested in this specific topic because you find yourself in this situation, it's worth a read, and I'll post in the comments here. And essentially, what it says, if there is a casualty loss on the property that is no fault of yours or any of your guests or the landlord, that both the landlord and the tenant have the right to terminate the lease if repairs are not made in a reasonable time. Here's the interesting part. What we're finding is that the definition of reasonable time is very fluid based on what is going on, right? So reasonable in May, when there's not been a storm and there's not COVID and there's no shortage of lumber, of PVC pipe, of copper, of tradesmen, maybe 72 hours. But take a listen to this soundbite and you'll hear that it's a little bit different these days.
There's this presumption that 7 days is a reasonable time, but in a disaster of this scope, it could be longer. However, the further we move from the disaster and we start to see the return of utilities and the availability of supplies and materials, we may be getting to the point where, okay, again, it's a judgment call, but reasonable time has expired and maybe
Right.
tenants should start to exercise their remedies to require repairs.
Yeah, and that requirement is contacting your landlord. Interestingly, in some sort of certified mail. We were saying, oh, well, couldn't you just do email with a read receipt? Surely that gives you a digital signature that they have received and opened the mail. And the attorneys we spoke to said, you actually want to take it one step farther, which is kind of strange when you consider that the notice to vacate that your landlord can give to you simply has to just be posted on your door. There's no, you don't have to, it's not certified, there's no receipt. It says, I'm posting this, you've got 7 days to get out, and that's that. One of the other topics that came up is this idea of unlivability. I'm gonna try and pop up some photos here to see where they land. Oh, perfect. These are images that we are very familiar with at this point. The water-soaked sheetrock, right? The wet pink or other colored insulation that people are seeing, the water dripping through, the ceilings. And we asked on behalf of this particular viewer, okay, is this an uninhabitable space? You can see that the floors are down to the bare concrete. It looks like maybe there used to be carpet because you can see the tackless is running around the edges where that carpet would be secured down. There is no ceiling whatsoever. And interestingly, the attorneys that we spoke with said it's actually habitable. Sure, there's no ceiling and that's not great, but there's nothing that precludes you from living there. I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, I got to say, I don't think that's getting my money's worth when it comes.
No, I mean it's a little iffy. But I was watching the interview that you did with them online, and I like the point that one of the lawyers made that you can go to a judge and kind of get a declaration about whether it's inhabitable or not, right? Like you kind of get that official, response, right?
Well, and I think that the thing that people need to keep in mind, and we discussed this in the interview, is look, at the end of the day, the apartment community wants to keep their occupancy rate up and you need a place to live. So you really both have the same goal here. So I think that there's always an opportunity for kind negotiation to say, listen, okay, I'll stay. There's no carpet, there's no ceiling. Can you give me a 10% break or a 20% break or whatever it is? Now, if your space is deemed uninhabitable, you do have the right to give a 7-day notice of termination to your landlord. And here's what you will get in return. First, a prorated portion of your rent. So if the rent was due on the 1st, you give notice on the 3rd, you're out by the 10th, you will get back the rent that you paid for the 10th, through the end of the month. You will also be given your security deposit back in full. And it's important to remember that you also have to keep up your end of the bargain, right? All your stuff has to be out of there. You got to give them the keys back. Just this idea of like, well, I don't want to live there anymore right now, but I might come back, so I'm going to leave some of my stuff in here. Doesn't work. Once you terminate, that's it. You're out, and it's time to go. The other thing that I will say, the question we got a lot from our viewers was, well, wait a second, I thought with COVID, you can't throw me out anymore. We had a guy who contacted us and said, okay, the building is in a bit of shambles, but my unit is okay. I mean, sure, we had some water on the floor, but I cleaned it up with some towels and now it's just fine. And I don't want to move. I don't want to pay for movers. I don't want to go through the hassle of finding an apartment and hoping I get a good rate and all of that other kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it seems that it is much easier for the apartment owner, the building owner, to declare a space uninhabitable than it is for the tenant to do so. And the argument that the apartment group made and was ultimately granted was, your space may be livable, but in order for us to fix the rest of this building, we can't guarantee that we won't shut off your water, that we won't cut through your ceiling, that we won't have to come through your apartment to access the insides of the walls and stuff, to find out, where everything is. So I guess the advice here is, enter into that kind of negotiation. Now, as for how COVID falls into play here, the moratorium on evictions through the end of March, I believe it is only for non-payment. It has nothing to do with all of this other stuff that's happening right now. So if your landlord is coming to you and saying, get out because you didn't pay, that's one thing, right? And something that's protected for now. If they're coming to you and saying, get out because it's uninhabitable, well, then that's something that you actually have to do. And at the end of the day, the only person who can actually evict you is a judge. And if you feel like the eviction process has been started somehow unfairly, then you are encouraged to contact, legal aid. And I know for so many people, I'm sure you get this too, our viewers, you start talking to them about lawyers and they cha-ching, 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 they get so scared about I'm not familiar with that. I don't know how to send a certified letter. I can't afford a lawyer. Legal aid is there to help you, and I would encourage that for a lot of folks. And again, with specific reference to COVID, they may post your eviction and start the process, but it's the removal of you from the property that is protected through at least the end of the month.
Yeah, and again, just let me ask you too, because I saw when you had that discussion with the lawyers last night, what kind of amount of time should someone reasonably be given, because we heard about, I think you mentioned a case where someone got a notice, you got to be out in 3 days. That seems a little quick.
Yeah, it was 4, which may as well have been 2, because you've got to find some place to live, and what do you do? So the advice that she gave was, okay, really kind of pare down the sticking points here. And in that case, the sticking point was the time, right? So you can go to the landlord and say, generally 7 days is customary, right? Because again, you got to get all your stuff. First of all, as you were saying, you've got to be in the apartment long enough and leave it how it is long enough to document everything that FEMA needs, right? Or your insurance needs. So you can't start moving out and then say, oh, by the way, I used to live in this place and give me some money for it if you can't document. So to your point, document first before we start kind of anything here. But I think a customary 7 days is reasonable. Now, just like the customary amount of time to make a repair has been extended, I also think it's not unreasonable to say, look, the customary amount of time to find a new apartment should also be extended, because if in fact we have hundreds of people who have been displaced who are now suddenly all looking for a new apartment, when now inventory is less because buildings have been damaged, it might take me a little while longer, to kind of get there. So
yeah, I think that's key, is just keeping those discussions open right now. Everybody is just trying to get through this. And if you're openly talking with your landlord, that's the best way to negotiate any of these situations.
100%. I've been a landlord before, and the best tenants are those who are upfront with me. Let me know what you need from me so that I can figure out how to help you and then how to kind of make everybody come out whole in the end. We're just about out of time here, but I want to thank folks for tuning in for our consumer catch up here today. Heather, for folks who might want to follow you, where can we find you on social media or online?
Sure. So our website is fox26houston.com. My Facebook page, where I put most of my consumer information, is Heather Sullivan, Fox26. I also have an Instagram and a Twitter page as well. So yeah, please give me a follow. I'm always trying to push out information to try and help people. Anything I report on goes there. So if you didn't catch it, you'll find the links and things like that there.
Can I find the cat on your Instagram too?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's where he lives. Yeah.
Awesome. And for those of you who don't already do so, you can check me out at fox4news.com and primarily on Facebook, facebook.com/SaveMeSteve, and Instagram is @Steve Noviello. Heather, so nice to get to finally connect with you. I hope we get to meet again real soon.
Yeah, I hope so. It's great to talk with you. Great to talk with all of our viewers.
Take care.